I want to welcome back Jen and Erin to talk about domestic violence during COVID-19, how critical this issue is, and how we should be really paying attention to what's happening here. Erin, real quick, if you could just explain the organization that you're from and your role there, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Public Policy at YWCA Utah, and we advocate around a lot of different issues from economic stability to racial justice to health issues for Utah women and girls. But specific to domestic violence, we are a direct service provider. So we have transitional housing and a crisis shelter and the Salt Lake Area Family Justice Center to work with folks who are looking for help and assistance and ways out of abusive situations.
And Jen, let's do the same with you here real quick as we set up this conversation.
Sure. Thanks for having us. The Utah Domestic Violence Coalition has been around in Utah since the late 70s. We hold the federal designation under the Violence Against Women Act as the statewide domestic violence coalition, and we support programs like Erin's. We provide training, technical assistance, policy advocacy. We run the statewide hotline, linking callers back to community-based programs in a free, confidential service that's available in over 100 languages. So collectively with our member programs, we take about 43,000 crisis calls per year, and we provide with our member programs about 100,000 nights of emergency shelter in addition to a range of other services. We started coordinating a lethality assessment protocol for the state a couple of years ago, and we do that in partnership with over 75 law enforcement agencies around the state to try to prevent and address domestic violence homicide, a really serious issue here in Utah.
So Jen, let's set this up. We had you on last week, both of you, talking about how critical this issue is. I wanted to have you back. I probably will want to have you back every week to talk about, how this issue is growing or not growing, or ways people can help and be involved. So can you give us an update on where things stand this week?
Well, we are always excited to come back and talk with you, Clint. So thank you for paying attention to this issue. It's a preventable public health issue, and we know we can do more through partnership like this with Silicon Slopes. So happy to come back and talk anytime. And really what we want people to know is that free confidential help is available 24/7, no matter what's going on. You can reach out to a community-based program like the YWCA or 13 other programs that we have around the state that provide comprehensive services. We're seeing a really serious uptrend in our call volume and in the call for services overall. And I think it's because there is increasing stress on our families and increasing stress on individuals who are trying to navigate this pandemic and the crisis that's coming. So we want people to know that no matter what's happening, whether you're the person experiencing abuse, or even if you find yourself in a position of using control, power and control, becoming aggressive with your family, reach out to us and we can connect you with help and services.
And Erin, I'd love to get an update from you on what you're seeing, you and your initiative and organization on what's been happening since we last talked.
Yeah, so our numbers on campus, folks who are living here in shelter and in transitional housing are pretty steady. We are full. We have about 180 people living here in a few different buildings, and 113 of those are kids. So we are making a lot of adjustments and trying to figure out how to do this communal living at a social safe distance. And then in terms of our crisis line calls, we are about where we were last week, which is about double of our normal call volume. And then with our Family Justice Center, which is services more during business hours where folks can access a lot of different agencies with one phone call or visit, we're about triple what we were even when I talked with you last week. So that uptick that Jen mentioned is definitely being felt here in Salt Lake.
And Erin, could you help people know the crisis hotline and ways that they should connect with you and your organization?
Yeah, so our if folks are in the Salt Lake area specifically, our number is 801-573-8600. But probably the general link line is the better number to give, which Jen's going to say right now really smartly because I'm blanking on the numbers.
That's okay. There's a lot to remember, especially these days. So the free confidential statewide hotline, we call it the link line, Clint, because we want people to know that there's one number that they can reach out to find services throughout the state. And then all of our member programs have crisis lines too. So the statewide hotline, the link line is 1-800-897-LINK. So that's 1-800-897-5465. If you ever call that number and we are at capacity, you won't get a busy signal or be turned away. It will automatically roll over to the national hotline and then route people back. So we've tried to make sure that there are catch-alls so that no one goes with unmet need or support in a period of crisis.
And Jen, for those who are not in, a violent relationship or not currently experiencing this, how can they help here?
That's such a good question. Especially with the unique dynamics in our communities, in our homes, in our work environments right now, it's especially important to pay attention. So if you care about someone, someone, you work around someone, your Zoom meetings are including people who are showing indications and signs of really extreme isolation. We're all isolated right now, but power and control can go up quite a bit when people feel like stressors are increasing. And so if you're seeing signs, something just doesn't feel right to you, increasing financial control. I think there's a lot of economic stress on families and individuals right now. So if you're hearing about exceptional amounts of financial control, emotional abuse, people often think that domestic violence and abuse are limited to the physical forms of violence and aggression. And that can certainly be the case. It happens to about 1 in 3 women in Utah in her adult lifetime, which is a terribly high percentage. But a lot of forms of violence and abuse in our families and intimate partnerships don't have any real physical signs. So it's important to understand and recognize psychological, emotional abuse, financial abuse, isolation. And some people that we're hearing about are being victimized in a way that's sort of unique to COVID, in that if they have to leave their house for work, their partners may be threatening to not let them back in or not let them have access to children, not in a way that they're planning for a family agreement or a cohabitation agreement, but in a very power and control oriented way. So those threats of isolation can look a lot different depending on what the reality is for a person.
And Erin, same question to you. How can people help?
Yeah, I think what I really want people to know is, and Jen mentioned this, but we're still here. I had a friend in Colorado actually reach out to me and has a friend of a friend of a sister of a friend who lives in Salt Lake and is looking to quote unquote finally leave an abusive situation. And she said, this is probably the worst time for her to leave, isn't it? And I said, it doesn't matter. We have very small windows where people feel kind of emotionally and maybe financially and other ways able to make that first step. And that window is not closed because of the pandemic. And I want people to know that we will still figure out a way. We actually have folks in a hotel if they need to be out of their home, and our shelter's full. And I know all the other programs across the state will do everything in their power. We'll work together. We'll work with hotels and other providers to make sure that people can get the help they need, even in the midst of all of this.
Can I add one thing too, Clint? Would that be okay?
Please do. Yes.
I just think it's really important to stress to people too, and Erin's getting at this as well. You don't have to leave in order to engage with professional victim advocacy services, and talking with a professional advocate reduces risk of the worst outcomes of domestic violence and abuse by about 65%, because we can engage immediately in safety planning. We can help assess for risk, especially in these unique environments that we're facing amidst this pandemic. It's really important to know that you can call us as many times as you want for free, confidentially, and talk with someone, and you don't have to leave and go somewhere in order to get help. There are lots of forms of help that can can happen right over the phone or over a laptop or over a smartphone. In an outreach center, there are lots of different ways to engage and a whole range of services. So certainly those emergency shelters and housing supports are open, and all of those crisis centers continue to work really hard to serve people. And also there's a range of other services that are available where you don't have to leave.
Erin, would you add to that in terms of, anything that you think those watching, the one thing that you would like them to know and to be clear on as it pertains to this?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that Jen made, in that a lot of times just being able to talk with someone who understands these dynamics and can empathize and help you feel like this isn't your fault and that you're not alone in this situation is so often the first step, or many steps. And yeah, I think that's exactly right, that we at our Family Justice Center, for example, that I mentioned, folks can look at legal assistance or more economic supports for their family, especially with more resources being funneled to our state to help folks who are economically impacted by the pandemic. So lots of opportunities to just talk with folks and have a compassionate listening person on the other end of the phone. And often that it makes the difference for someone in just being able to keep getting through.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on, and I appreciate you coming on regularly to give our community updates. I really think that this issue is so critical, and so many of us need to jump in and help. For those, again, who want the number here, it's 1-800-897-LINK. That's LINK. That's 1-800-897-5465. Jan and Erin, you're doing amazing work. Thanks for everything you're doing. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you for paying attention to this. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Jen.
See you guys.